and thank you very much to Iamton for helping us stage this webinar today so we can all share some insight into how fraudsters go about the process of doing fraud. So my name's David Pope, I'm the Marketing Director over at Jumio, and today, if I may, I'd like to give a very brief introduction to my company, explain who we are and why we've done this research. And then secondly, I want to get stuck straight into the research and look at 5 ways in which fraudsters steal identities. And then lastly, finish with an overview on how technologies such as Jumio can stop the fraudsters from coming to your business. So briefly then, who are Jumio? So at Jumio, we call ourselves a computer vision company. And what we mean by that is that these days we think it's old-fashioned to have to type in your own data into a website or an app when you're about to transact, open an account, remit some money, book an airplane ticket. And we think these days everyone's clever devices should do all the hard work for them. So we integrate our computer vision services into our clients' websites or their apps, so then when their customers come along and want to do a transaction, send some money, create an account, they don't have to do any typing. All they need to do, whip out their payment card or whip out their driving license or passport and hold it up to the camera on their mobile device or hold it up to the webcam on their computer, and computer vision will see and scan and validate the data and carry that data into the transaction. So we set out to use computer vision first and foremost to solve the fraud problem, but what we've also found along the way is that we're really helping companies to speed up the customer experience, to speed up the customer account creation process, and thereby improve the customer conversion and customer revenue process as well. So anyway, that's enough about Jumio for now. Let's have a look at this research. So, as Veronica mentioned, this is from a white paper called The Fraudsters Playbook, and what we did is to look at how fraudsters steal identities. So first of all, I think it's good to share this kind of information, because the more that we can work together to make life harder for the fraudster in the remittance world, then the harder a target we become. So it makes it harder for money launderers and fraudsters to target the remittance industry if we all share this kind of information and share this kind of insight. And the first comment I'd like to make here is that fraud is actually a 4-stage process in terms of, first of all, the actual stealing of the identity before the fraudster goes on to commit fraud. That's just the first part of the 4 stages. The second stage, of course, is the committing of the fraud, using someone else's identity details to create a fraudulent transaction. The third stage is receiving the goods or services or monies as a result of the fraud. Then the last and final stage is how to profit, how to realize the profit from the goods or services monies that have been obtained through the act of fraud. So this research is just into the first stage of fraud. And again, please feel free to download this white paper from our company's website. And we'll also email everyone afterwards to show you all where to find it. So we've got 5 different exploits here, 5 different ways in which fraudsters steal identities, and this is not an exhaustive list. This is just a list of 5 ways that we think are really interesting in terms of how fraudsters steal identities. Some are very, very high-tech exploits, some are very, very low-tech exploits. So let's get stuck straight into it and look at the first one. So we call this the coffee shop Wi-Fi hack. It's quite self-explanatory, really. So a fraudster sitting there drinking a cup of tea in a coffee shop, and what he's going to do, he's going to broadcast a Wi-Fi hotspot from his device, and this could be a laptop or a tablet or whatever. And what he's going to do is he's going to name this Wi-Fi hotspot with an identical name to the real coffee shop Wi-Fi hotspot in that coffee shop. Now, there's no central registry of Wi-Fi networks. This is a very, very easy thing to do, and as a result, coffee drinkers, coffee lovers, they're going to come into that coffee shop, they're going to log on to the fraudster's hotspot, instead of the actual real coffee shop hotspot. And surprise, surprise, the fraudster's Wi-Fi hotspot is going to contain some malware that allows the fraudster to see their device. So this malware is going to enable the fraudster to walk around that person's machine, to see them transacting on it in real time. And what they're really going to be looking for is information about people's online accounts. So that could be their social media accounts, it could be their bank account, it could be information in their email inbox from companies that they've transacted with, and they're emailing someone with the username. Could be going into the browser to look at the history, and then going through the login process and seeing the password. And so it's really gathering information about usernames and identities and where that person shops. And then what they're going to do is use a piece of cryptography software called Cain Enable. So this was originally invented as a password recovery tool for system administrators, now more commonly used by fraudsters to hack, to force people's passwords. So by looking around someone's machines, then combining that with a bit of software to force people's passwords, the fraudster, after a morning's worth of work, can leave that coffee shop with probably, let's say, 50 different identities. And it's really rich data as well. It's not just a name, an address, and a date of birth, which are the most common elements that a fraudster wants to be able to do fraud, but it's really rich data. It's the usernames and passwords from people's transactional accounts where they spend money on the internet. So quite scary stuff. The fraudster we spoke to here pointed out this was only one of the methods that they used to do identity theft, but they like the Wi-Fi hack because it gives them quite deep access to the victim's financial identity. In other words, it goes beyond straightforward name and address and date of birth. So let's go from the high tech to the low tech. So we call this one the local government census. And what we have here is a fraudster selecting a neighbourhood or a series of streets, and they're going to conduct a fake local council or local government survey. And the first part of the trick is to put a leaflet through the doors, through the letterboxes in this street the day before, to advertise the census and say that our council's representatives are going to come calling to listen to our constituents and see how we can better serve our citizens. And so that's building the trick, that's giving it an air of legitimacy. And of course the fraudsters only do this the day before, they only do it a minimum amount of time before, just in case somebody calls into the council to report it, but a day before seems to work fine for them. And then they're going to work the houses. The people in the gang, they're going to be hand-picked to match the demographic of the neighbourhood. They'll be dressed in suits, they'll have badges and letterhead to affect their bogus credentials. And this is a it's all building the trick. It's a basic competence trick, really. And the fraudster said that they figure on a 1 in 4 success rate. And of course, by playing the kind of angle about, so how can we provide better service to our loyal council taxpayers, or how can we give you better value for money for the council tax you pay, Mr. Pope? Well, quite frankly, that's the sort of angle and conversation that most people will readily open up to. I think everyone's got an opinion on how everyone's tax dollars can be a little bit better spent. But so using angles like that, they figure on a 1 in 4 success rate for going away with the data they want to be able to go on to commit identity theft. And so as well as coming away with a normal name, address, and date of birth, they're going to come away with length of tenancy, email address, and other data points that they need to commit the fraud. So the fraudster here says that each of the gang members would hit 200 doors a day, and by playing the angles, they reckon they can walk away with the details they want at least 1 in 4 times. So one person is going to come away with 50 identities per day. So that you multiply that up by a number of people working in the gang, and this is an identity theft of some scale, actually. So on the subject of the gang, here's a quick overview. as to how the gang is constructed. So this is very much the industrialization of fraud. In other words, it's creating a structure, a hierarchy that is commonly seen in the business world. Right at the top of the pyramid, you've got the master fraudster. So he or she will own the identities that have been gleaned from this exploit as a result, and they'll use them or sell some of them on carding forums. More on carding forums later in the webinar. And the master has a handful of trusted captains who act as his right-hand man, and they play key roles here. Their role is to actually recruit and brief and manage the soldiers. The captains, they're also known as the 10% men, because they get paid 10% of the master's overall revenues. And there's a wall between the master and the soldiers. The master never meets the soldiers never know who the master is, and the soldiers at the bottom of the food chain here, they get paid on a results basis. So they get paid £5 or $10 for every identity they obtain. So what we said here is that we saw here from the fraudster, he said that there was coaching involved as well and mentoring, and that the captains and the master would really help the lieutenants, the soldiers on the ground, to decide which houses to approach and which not. And they said that it's quite obvious. A decent car on the driver outside the house is a good tell for a good amount of credit behind that identity, and therefore it's an identity that's worth stealing. So back to the high-tech world, let's talk about social media. So there's obviously much been made in the press around how, as a society now, we perhaps give away too much information on social media. So my first word of advice to you all would be not to put your date of birth on your social media profile, on your accounts. Many people do. I even advocate against putting year of birth. One potential trick that fraudsters will work when they're on social media sites to try and get a date of birth is to try a little bit of stargazing. So they'll say, "Oh, I bet you're a Pisces, aren't you?" "Oh no, I'm not a Pisces, but my sister's a Pisces." "No way, my brother's a Pisces, he's the 16th. What date are you?" And so from there, it's quite easily to add a month and a day, if only the year of birth is displayed on the social media profile. So I think we should all be very careful with that. So onto this particular social media technique that we learned about from this fraudster. And so the fraudster, he's going to reach out and start befriending someone on this network called Brian. Now, what the fraudster is really interested in is people that give away lots of information on their social network. So the fraudster might be interested in Brian, but more importantly, the fraudster might really be interested in Brian's contacts that give out lots of information about themselves, and specifically where they go and how they spend their money. So what the fraudster will then do, they'll create a fake account for Brian, and they'll pretend to be Brian and reach out to Brian, the real Brian's connections, saying, "Oh, you're not going to believe it, I've lost access to my social media account, oh, I've had to start a new one, can you please connect to this one here?" So at that point, the fraudster who's pretending to be Brian can now see Brian's contacts and all the information about Brian's contacts. So in other words, some really rich data here, where they're educated, where they're employed, what their job title is, what educational achievements they have, what their hobbies are. But really it's key information such as venues that they frequent that the fraudster is really interested in. In other words, where they live and where and how they spend their time and money, and that's really rich data for fraudsters. And the exploit that comes off the back of that is that it creates an angle, it creates a way in for the fraudster to be able to monetize that identity. And one of the ways the fraudsters would do this, of course, is to look at which bars or restaurants or other venues that they frequent, and then they would get in touch with them, with these people, and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we charged you too much, Mr. Pope, when you were in our bar tonight. We need to make a refund to your card. We charge you twice for your meal, Mr. Pope. Sorry about that. We need your card number to transfer the monies back onto it." So not everyone will fall for that, but enough people do. And of course, at that point, the fraudster get the card number, as well as already having the name, the date of birth, the address, and any number of other data points. So social networks, fraudsters do quite like them. One of the comments that one of the fraudsters made is that they can't believe that banks and financial institutions still use mother's maiden name as a piece of data in the security process, given, of course, that it's actually perfectly possible on social networks to walk through them to actually identify someone's mother and thereby identify a maiden name as well. So the fraudster said here is that fraudsters are very targeted in their approach. In fact, they like to target people born between 1960 and 1975. The reason being for that is that they're present on social media, but not social media enough savvy to protect themselves and to restrict the amount of data that's on there. Plus, they're of a perfect age to have a good credit history, and therefore, in other words, at that age, they've got a good track record of paying back bills and policies and mortgages. So in other words, they've got a good credit history and a good line of credit. But at that age, they're still economically active before they're retired, so the time poor, which makes it slightly easier for the con to take place. So the offer that's too good to refuse, inspired by a certain film, of course, but this is probably one of the most simple cons that we heard about. And for this, all the fraudster needs is nothing more than a telephone and a phone book. So what he's going to do, he's going to call people up from the phone book, and he's going to pretend to be a major supermarket. And the offer that's going to be too good to refuse is something along the lines of, so yes, hi, Mr. Pope, we're going to offer our loyal card holders a discount on the next few shops. It's just a test program. We're just calling a few of our card holders at the moment to offer a discount on the next few shops in return for a payment taken on the card today. And so it typically works out that it's 50% off your next 3 shops, and all we need from you is a payment today of £20, Mr. Pope. So again, not everyone will fall for it, but plenty of people, you'll kind of like see the dollar signs pinging in their eyes, and they're kind of thinking it through. Oh, hang on, what if I spend £200 at a time? Is the discount still applicable to really large orders? So in other words, it's human nature. They're thinking that they're getting an advantage in the system, when in fact the fraudster is playing their advantage by preying on their human nature. So at that point, the fraudster doesn't take a payment on the card, but what he does take, of course, is the card number. And this is a very simple way to get someone's name and address and card number. In fact, in the Jumio white paper, there's a transcript of one of the fraudsters we spoke to going through this script. And it's worth listening to. The tone, the language, the positioning, it's just so convincing. It's very believable. And so the fraudster we spoke to here, here's a chap called Tony. He said, yes, so it's very quick and easy and has a high success rate. And what the fraudster would sometimes do is actually use those card details, then pay for a Royal Mail redirect on the card, so that then they can start to apply for bank accounts and mobile phone accounts and other forms of finance in their address, and all the mail would come to the fraudster's house instead. So the other one we looked at, and this one has been well publicised in the press. If we imagine, I'm sure we can all remember reports of sites such as the Silk Road that got shut down recently. And so what we see here on the left is a little screen grab of what's called a carding supermarket, which is where fraudsters sell their wares. They're basically selling name, address, credit card detail, bank account information that they've stolen or by hacking someone's website or payment processor. And so it's all very volume driven. The more you buy, the cheaper they are, and quite often these sites get shut down by the FBI or the UK's National Crime Agency, but no sooner do they get shut down than they crop up again. So this is all well and good. This is quite commonly known information, but this is quite a good insight into the community on the Carder forums. This is a piece of research that was done by some very clever criminologists from the University of Southampton, and what they did is they actually mapped the range of people, the range of actors who worked in the underground economy. So in other words, on these carding forums, it's not just the card details you can buy, but other people's services. And so as it turns out, there's a fairly complex system of contractors and subcontractors who provide their specialist skills to help fraudsters go on to do fraud. So you have the carder right here in the middle, and of course the carder needs data to be able to go off and do fraud. So the carder will work with ID thieves who might call up people and pretend to be a supermarket, or the carder might work with bank data stealers whose job it is to go out and find exploits in particular financial institutions, create malware to target those websites, or of course the bank data stealer might work with phishers and spammers who send out millions of emails to people saying, oh, we've got a report of a fraud on your Visa card. Please enter your Visa details here so we can confirm that you're still in possession of the card, or something along those lines. So the carder right in the middle of the web here is using other people to be able to perpetrate the identity theft process. Then in terms of using other people to perpetrate the fraud process, he's got people that work with him in terms of having money delivered to their address, people who act as cashiers to hold the money for him, people who act as the currency exchanges to be able to start laundering the money. So there's a fairly complex web of contractors in there as well. So that was just a bit of a overview of the white paper. We'll send out a link to everyone shortly so everyone can have a look at it and download it and read more about the fraudsters. So in that case, how can we help stop the fraudsters coming to your site? So the good news is that computer vision is a fantastic deterrent to fraudsters, and it's going to detect when fraudsters are trying to use their identities on your sites. And what we see, of course, is that 9 times out of 10 when a fraudster is doing fraud, they don't have the card, they just have the card details. So they might have got the card number by calling someone up pretending to be a supermarket, they might have, or a bank, they might have got the card details by buying them on the card in the supermarket. But the point is that 9 times out of 10, the fraudsters don't have the card. So asking a customer to initiate a deposit process or an account funding process using an image of their card is fantastic. The real customer will proceed. The fraudsters will think, oh, I'm not going to try it here. I'll go to the next site that doesn't have this technology in place. And the same goes with identity documents as well. So this is one of the ways to stop fraudsters from coming to your site, but at the same time, it's not just the fraud problem that we're solving. What we see on the right-hand side is a checkout form. So e-commerce is 20 years old this year. Now, in the last 20 years, the whole world has changed. What we buy has changed. How we buy it has changed. But one thing has stayed the same, and that's the checkout form, or the account creation form. And so this is prime for disruption. And what we know is that forms like this create payment friction. They cause people to abandon transactions because the process is taking too long, the form is too long. In fact, what we see is that 47% of people are abandoning processes because the 41% is because the card entry is too difficult, and so on and so forth. So abandonment is quite an issue for businesses transacting online, as is fraud, and Jumio is a company that's trying to tackle both those problems at the same time. So what we actually found was that, yes, scanning a payment card instead of typing the card number in the old-fashioned way tackles the fraud problem, but we also found that it actually perversely, it created more revenue. First of all, it's quite a different customer experience, but it's actually increasing customer satisfaction and decreasing basket abandonment. So here's a quick step through of how the process works. So here's a typical checkout screen on somebody's mobile. This could be on mobile web, or it could be in an app. And the customer has the choice. They can type in their card data the old-fashioned way, or of course they can press this little button that says auto scan card with camera. So surprise, surprise, they're going to choose to press this button. That's going to wake up the Jumio technology. And of course the Jumio technology isn't something that the end consumer has to access or download. It's all built into the website, the app. And the point at which they choose to scan, the camera wakes up, and then the camera is going to see the card details, and then the customer has to enter their CVV code in to comply with PCI regulations. So first of all, what we're doing, we're getting the 16-digit card number, we're getting the issue date, the expiry date, and we can also get the customer name as well if our client so desires. So how is this actually improving the customer experience, and why is it reducing basket abandonment? Well, it's making checkout and deposit and fund a much, much quicker process. It's going from what's a 55-second process in terms of typing in the old-fashioned way to a 5-second process in terms of scanning. So we're saving lots of time per transaction, and the faster and quicker it is, and the faster and quicker and easier it is, the less people will abandon. The less people that will abandon, the more people will complete. So as a result, we're seeing more revenues come through our client sites. In fact, we see that on average our clients will enjoy a 25% increase in transaction completion, or to put it another way, a 25% decrease in abandonment. When we went live with one of our clients last year, a big travel site, we saw that the completion rate on transactions went from 9% using the old-fashioned key entry method to 52% using the card scanning method. So that's a really big uplift in completion rates. And of course, does it solve the problem that we set out to tackle? So yes, what we see is that it reduces, NetSwipe will reduce chargeback rates by 67%. So that's quite a good rate of reduction just for one particular fraud tool. So onto the identity document scanning process. So what we see here is, of course, this is how we would all assert our identities in the olden days before the days of the internet. We'd walk into a branch, we'd show an identity document, the person behind the counter would look at our face, look at the ID document, look at our face, look at the ID document, and they go, oh yes, thank you, Mr. Pope. So that's a process that Jumio has now translated for the internet. But one of the other things we can do, of course, here is to compare the face in the identity document with the face in the camera and come back with a comparison match between the two. So in other words, I could steal somebody's wallet or purse, at which point I'd have their identity document, but I wouldn't have their face. And then during the process, of course, we're going to be checking the security features of the document. The first thing we're going to be looking at is the layout of the document. So let's say, for example, it's a Mexican passport issued in 2010. We know exactly what layout that should have, what font should be used, what font size should be used, and how all the data elements should be laid out. Then we're going to look at the hologram, we're going to look at the microprint, which is the tiny microscopic pictures of birds and bees in the background. We're going to compare it to a list of known forgeries, and we're also going to check what's known as the machine-readable zone data at the bottom. And in here, for example's sake, if your surname's Pope, you're male, you're British, you're born in 1980, that means that, for argument's sake, the 17th character has to be Y. From there, we're then going to do a little bit of photo forensics. And so the image you see on the left-hand side of the screen, that's a legitimately issued Spanish passport. But what the fraudster's done here is to manipulate the image. But once we put a little bit of a reverse light filter on here, we can see where the fraudster has manipulated the image, so we'd actually catch this as a fraudulent document. So does it do the job it's set out to do? Yes. NetVerify reduces fraud by about half. At the same time, though, to also come back to the conversion proposition, what we're seeing is that it really speeds up the customer onboarding process. So Transfast, one of our clients, and the quote from them here is that we can reduce the risk of fraudulent activity in their online environment, but also, crucially, in a way that's simple and hassle-free for our users. One of our other clients, a big gaming site called Mr. Green, they implemented NetVerify, and in the first week that they implemented, they were able to verify as many identity documents in that first week than they otherwise would have been able to do in a month. So it's really improving the customer experience. And on that note, we've recently released a new solution called FastFill. And the research, the thinking behind this is that the less fields people have to fill out, the more people will actually complete that customer sign-up form, that web form. So we see here the research shows that going from a form with 11 fields down to a form with 4 fields increases conversion by 160%. Well, we went a stage further and thought, well, what if the customer hardly has to fill in any fields at all? And so we launched Fast Fill, and Fast Fill does what it says on the tin. It fills customer details up into the customer sign-up form very, very fast, and does so using the same technology as our card scanning service. So in other words, customer can type in their data the old-fashioned way, or they can press the Scan ID button, then that scans the identity document, and in less than a second, the data will appear in that particular website, neatly laid out in all the correct fields. So what we're hoping to achieve here with this service is to increase customer conversion, to decrease abandonment in the account creation process by about 25%. And of course, both the Fast Fill service and the Net Verify service work for, I think we're up to 105 countries now for passports and driving licenses and ID cards in each of those countries. So just to finish up then, everybody's talking about mobile payments, mobile wallets, online wallets at the moment, and you'll be relieved to know that Jumio aren't creating a mobile wallet, but what we are doing is using our services as a building block to create the infrastructure for mobile wallets to make it much easier for people to transact when they're online. So Jumio Port is a service that takes advantage of the already existing infrastructure on people's mobile devices, so namely Apple Passbook or Samsung Mobile Wallet. So here's a sample transaction. Just happens to be an online pizza delivery shop. So we've ordered our Leberkäse, and we're going to, Leberkäse, by the way, it's Austrian fast food. So we're going to choose to auto scan the credit card. But at the point at which the card details have been captured, we're going to choose to save those details to Passbook. We then get told the data has been saved and successfully encrypted in Passbook. And then, of course, when the customer comes back the next time, they don't have to type, they don't have to scan. All they're going to do, they're going to port their data back into their transaction from Passbook. So this is a great way to equip one-touch commerce and to speed up the transactional processes. So this is what Passbook should probably look like. Mine, sadly, is just full up of airplane boarding cards and coffee shop loyalty cards, but this is how Passbook should look. So you have your card details in there, your driving license details in there, and the way I view these things is that this is actually more secure than a wallet because there's no PIN code on my wallet, but there is on my phone. So here's the important information. Of course, Jumio is, we take our redundancy and our encryption very, very seriously, and we're PCI level 1 certified. But we kind of go a little bit beyond that, and we apply the same protocols in PCI to PII, personally identifiable information, as well. Cross-platform, Android and Apple, cross-device, desktop, mobile, tablet. And in terms of integration time, I think the record for NetSwipe, the card scanning service, is 29 minutes. Net Verify takes a day or so longer than that because there's a few more configuration options to go through. And so here's a few of our recent awards, and here's some of the clients that we work with. So I'll be more than happy to take any questions, Veronica. Over to you.
Thank you, David. That was really useful. I have to say, I will definitely be more careful next time I go to a coffee shop and use my laptop there. I would like to say, while people think about some questions, I had a chance to try this software actually, and I was surprised how fast it was to basically do a payment. The first time I tried it twice. The first time I tried it was when David showed to me the system. But recently I had to pay my minicab to the airport with this software, and it was really fast, very easy to use, and yes, so I think we have something that, yeah, definitely we have to consider this. I think everyone everyone that would like to try, please let us know, because I'm sure David can do a presentation or can allow you to use it. I don't know if you have if we have any questions. I think.
So I think Chandrasekhar had a question about if someone was using a virtual keyboard, can the fraudster access the password? I'm not exactly, Chandrasekhar, I'm not really sure what that question means, but if you want to type in a clarification, we can, yeah, I can try and answer that for you. In the meantime, one of the most common questions we get is, well, do actually people feel comfortable with scanning their card, scanning their data in through their camera? And what we see is that 53% of people are happy to scan their details in through their device camera. And this, of course, is just with a little discrete button in the checkout process or account creation process to give them the option to scan instead of typing. And then of those people that do scan, 93% of them are happy to come back a second or third time and scan again to save themselves time and actually to complete their transaction a lot quicker. Sorry, go on, Veronica.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to, if you could tell us who are your clients. You have clients in the remittance industry, so if you can tell us if they are online, traditional-based clients.
Yeah,
so
sure. So Western Union have been a client of ours for a while. Transfast in the are a remitting client of ours. And we've actually got quite a few other remittance clients, but I'm not allowed to say which ones, so I don't have the PR rights to be able to quote them. We're working on a press release and a case study with one of the most well-known remitters in the world at the moment. So we'll hopefully be publishing that shortly. But if anybody would like to speak to any of our remitting clients, the CEO of one of our remitting clients is more than happy to give us a reference and talk to you.
We do, well, I have been spoken to some of our members that they use the service Jumio, and I can say that some of the clients are using this service online. Some of the other is the traditional player. So yes, I mean, whoever that wants to have more, references, I'm sure some of our members will be happy to share. Of course, obviously, we can't mention the names until they authorize us, but it's always a possibility. Then you mentioned something about the countries you're operating in. Could you tell us a bit more which countries, roughly? I mean, you're not going to mention over 100 countries, obviously, but regions, and which one would be the next step also for the telcos? What else?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just jump onto the Jumio website actually and show some of the countries that we're in. But it's very important for us to try and serve as many countries as possible, because thus far, in terms of e-commerce and electronic verification procedures that remitters can use online, it's very much been led by database identity verification, which is great and works very well. And some good companies out there that do that. But the problem is that databases don't exist in every country to support the database verification. And in particular, in countries where remittance corridors are most popular, so in other words, in countries in South America, countries in Asia, the verification databases don't exist. But identity documents are a universal token. So everyone has an identity document, and so we can offer that service for the most common corridors. So if we look at the countries in the Americas, so countries where remittance is a high percentage of GDP. So we look at Mexico, we can do Jamaica, Honduras, Guatemala, Cuba, Costa Rica, El Salvador. Then look at other key remittance corridors. So we can do lots of countries here in South America, Colombia and Chile, Brazil being key corridors. And then, as you might expect, we can do all the European countries. But then looking at Asia, so the key corridors here, Bangladesh, probably one of the biggest corridors in the world. So Bangladesh and India and Pakistan as well. And then looking at Africa as well, we can do a whole host of countries in Africa. We can, of course, add new countries. We'll add new countries where corridors are being opened up, like Somalia, and where we see the demand from our clients, whether our client be in prepaid cards or money transfer, it doesn't really matter. We can add new countries quickly. It's just a question of teaching our system and our process and our agents the how to handle those particular documents.
Thank you. Regarding the mobile wallet, is there something you can tell us about that part?
Yeah, so really it's not so much a mobile wallet in itself, but it's just a way to help any company use the existing technology on a mobile to create a wallet transaction. So the way it works then is, let's supposing you're funding money to your online remittance accounts, and you've previously scanned your card using that company's website or app. If you then come back and you want to fund your remittance account with more money, and you're using the Jumio port service, what you would do is you'd port your card details back from your Apple Passbook or Samsung mobile wallet, and you'd be porting it into the transaction from your wallet infrastructure on the phone. So Jumio is not making a wallet, but we're just helping companies to use the infrastructure on their phone. And the reason we do that, and the reason that all of Jumio's services exist, is just to make the transaction process as quick and easy as possible. It's not Jumio's job to take the payment, it's Jumio's job to get our clients' customers to the payment as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Is there any other question? I'm sure any other question that you might have, the participants, they can send it to us by email. They will all be answered by David. Yeah. His email is there. So anyway, if you need to reach David, you can always contact us, IMTN as well. David is, Jumio is a member of IMTN. And I know David for a few years now. And yep. I know he will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So I would like to thank very much David for this really helpful webinar, the presentation, and thank you very much Jumio as well, and looking forward to receive your comments and your feedback, and let us know. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you, Kelly.
Bye.